Welcome to the Req Room with Mandy and Mio, a podcast about books and the people who write them. What do you think the Song of Achilles actually sounds like? Like if you were to sing like Achilles'
I don't
song.
like where this is going.
What do you think it sounds like? I just want to know. What do you think?
I don't know. You know what? Okay. My honest answer is really bad because every time that they mention him singing in the book or like the sound of a lyre, the sound that's in my head is actually Renaissance music.
Okay.
Which is very far.
Well, when I imagine that the way it sounds like is call me by your name.
Oh my god.
Because remember how Patroclus dies is they call him by
they do.
Achilles' name. So that might just be the
I walked right into this.
Song of Achilles.
Alright.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be a lot of singing here. In this room.
I feel like everyone who's gonna listen to this and who's never heard you do that bit.
Yeah, we're gonna lose everyone.
Yeah, everyone's gonna be like, wait, that was a familiar too.
It's like that?
But also he's saying the title of a completely different thing. So yes, basically the joke, everyone.
I'm spoiling the end already of the novel from the get-go, which is like the ending that we've known all along.
Yeah, I literally was gonna say, this is like, and this is relevant to what we're also gonna discuss later, but it's like that time when I had Macbeth with Leon. Leon was my prof, our friend Leon.
Mm-hmm. Our friend of the podcast, Leon Peckson.
Friend of
who's
the
not
podcast.
going to appear on this episode in any way, shape, or form.
So when I had him for Shakespeare, I remember during one of our like earlier weeks of class, he said something that was like, yes, so this will come up again later when we discuss the last few scenes and eventually Macbeth's death. And when he said Macbeth's death, someone in my class gasped. And he was like, sir, spoiler. And then literally everyone just looked at him.
No.
And Leon didn't know what to say. He was like, oh, should I have really kept? But surely you might have known.
Right.
So, yeah, if we at the beginning of this already spoiled how this ends.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Please
I'm sorry,
pause
but
the podcast
also,
here and then read the whole book, I guess.
I know. But then also, I'm low-key expecting that if you're listening to this, you are on Tumblr at a very specific time.
And so by this, you mean the Req Room. It's a podcast with us, Mandy and Mio, where we ask the question, when does a writer's work become required reading? In each episode, we take popular authors of the day and review each entry in their bibliographies to see just how close these writers get to the sweet spot between mainstream breakout success and traditional literary sensibility. I am Mio.
I'm Mandy.
And today we're starting a new miniseries.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, we finished one. Yeah. One in the bag, one in the can. It's already out in the world. We're recording this the day after we put out
the can is actually open for the world.
Normal people, so we're filling in the gap. Now you know how many days we record episodes in advance, sort of. But we are starting a new miniseries, and this time we've decided to focus on the works of a writer named Madeline Miller. And the interesting thing I think about Madeline Miller is that she sort of, like in our last miniseries, we focused on Sally Rooney and how she sort of grew out of a traditional literary establishment. I mean, not that she took creative writing per se. She did do like a master's in American literature. But she kind of like made her way in through like submissions to literary magazines, journals, anthologies, and then that's kind of where her career picked up from there. Whereas here with Madeline Miller, I feel like it's a bit different, and this is something I think that you can speak a lot to, since you referred to Tumblr.
Yes, indubitably so. No. Well, okay, because like I guess the difference between like Madeline and Sally would be that like Madeline is like a traditional scholar. like she was okay. First of all, let's just gloss over her bio like real quick. So she grew up in New York and Philadelphia, and she attended Brown, where she earned her bachelor's and master's in classics. And she also has tutored Latin, Greek, and Shakespeare to like high school students. But I have a feeling that she has also taught it at like some unis.
Right.
I could be wrong about that, but I have heard that. And she also studied at the University of Chicago's Committee on Social Thought. And this is the coolest one for me. Also in the dramaturgy. Dramaturgy? I'm gonna say dramaturgy.
Yeah.
The dramaturgy department at Yale School of Drama, where she had focused on the adaptation of classical texts to modern forms.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Which is super cool. Yeah, right? I mean, like, if you know her work now, you'd be like, oh, okay,
right.
Of course, that's, like, something that you would be, like...
Exactly, yeah, because,
applying in
like, we're focusing on her two novels, The Song of Achilles and Circe, and both of them are notably adaptations or reinterpretations of the Greek epics of Homer. Yeah. Which kind of begs the question then, like, you know, what's her third book going to be about? Like, she ran out of Homeric epics.
Like literally, he's got two great things.
Right. Well, I mean, like the sort of the third, like I guess most obvious choice would be for her to do something on the Aeneid, on Virgil, which was
that's what. Okay, I was also thinking that, but then also to be fair, so as we mentioned, like she has two novels. It's the one that we're covering today, Song of Achilles, her debut novel. Yep. And then her second one is Circe? We'll find out. But that one, as of earlier this year, that was going to be picked up already by... I mean, that had just been picked up by HBO Max.
Right. Oh, yeah.
To be adapted to like a movie or a miniseries, something like that.
Something like that.
So I feel like that's what she's going to be working on first before she tries to think of what she's going to do. Whatever her third novel will be. I think one of the most interesting things of, you know, like we said, is that she is really focused on like bringing forth like these classical kind of intimidating stories to like a broader audience, and especially a younger audience.
There's an important context there, which is that also, at least for us, that around the time that this first book, Song of Achilles, was becoming popular, we were also experiencing the Homeric epics in our own way. Me a little earlier than you, but then you in due time. Since we both went to the same university, and since their curriculum is very like liberal arts, liberal education oriented, a lot of us, I mean, practically all of us were...
all of us.
Yeah, all of us were required to take more or less the same early, like first year classes, regardless of what your course was, which means that everyone in our university took classic literature from first sem onwards. Nothing could be, I guess, like a little more alien than getting kids from all over the Philippines, putting them in a college, and then telling them, all right, now we're going to read about the Trojan War. And it's like very deep, and it's like very, like, I mean, you know, there are a lot of universal themes, but we're going to have to like also like trudge through the very obscure bits of it.
I will not lie, like before university, I think the only real connection I had to like the Iliad was, of course, I think this is the same for everybody, but like the concept of the Trojan horse, of course.
Right.
But then the specific one I always have in mind is the one from that one Hey Arnold episode.
Oh, okay. That wasn't even the one that I thought you were gonna say. I actually don't remember it, so please, for the benefit of both me and the audience,
you know what? It's super. Oh my gosh! I just remember. I think that's where I learned about the concept of the Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Because there was like this. I think it was sort of like a Civil War reenactment or something that like Arnold's grandpa was part of. And then it got super intense because it got like #too-real. And the grandpa and like I guess his kalaban, who was also a grandpa, was like they got so into it, and Arnold was like, we have to stop this because they're old, and also it's the weekend. Like, they're just gonna take over the whole weekend doing this. Like, if you look for this episode, they really built a fort and everything. It was like across town, so like there was a real battlefield in between each fort, and then eventually I think Arnold's like team was the one that thought of the Trojan horse thing, so they could end everything. And then so they built like this huge wooden horse, and then they go over to the other side, and then that's how. Yeah, so that's always what I think of. I just think of Hey Arnold.
Yeah,
when someone says Trojan horse.
As much as I love Hey Arnold, I actually do not remember that episode at all. And what I thought you were going to say,
I think one of the things about that episode also is that that's where. Do you remember their pet pig?
Yes, Abner.
Abner. He gets heavily compromised in this. I
don't know what
fight.
You mean.
As in, like, I think he's used as like a war prize or something. I think the other team
that is very Trojan War like.
Yeah, exactly. I might might be not remembering this well, but like I do really remember the Lolo being so upset that something happened to Abner. And then Arnold getting so desperate for it to end that he's like, what if we just like Trojan horse the shit?
Yeah. I thought you were going to invoke was the 2004 Wolfgang Peterson film Troy, starring Brad Pitt.
Not at all. I did not even see that. I don't even think I have seen that film yet.
You haven't? Oh, okay. It's not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like okay. I skimmed through it when I was rewatching it recently. I did a lot of things to prepare for this episode. Like I skimmed through bits of Troy. I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I also got that new game Hades, where everyone in Greek mythologies was just like horny for each other.
All right, but then also is that really far from?
I don't know. It's very, very canon. Very canon.
Yeah.
But anyway, like that being said, like every one of us, we were all required to read the Iliad.
At university,
yeah, and I think the sort of important thing to jump off from there is that we didn't really have any like grounding contextualization for that. So like even I remember like I have this distinct memory of like trying to get through the second book of the Iliad, and for me like that was such a frustrating book. Because half of that book were all the allies of Agamemnon and Achilles.
Is that when they were just like listing
names? They were just listing names. Yeah. And I was like, why the hell
and you know
are we
how that's
like
a thing that happens multiple times?
Yeah.
Like them just saying names?
Well, yeah, it kind of becomes... I kind of understood it afterwards, after that book. But in the second book,
obviously
I really
the first time you read it...
think of why that was important until our professor at the time... he made this important point. He had a really good point where he was saying that because these epic poems were all sung or recited, the idea was that people were listening to them and that these people were probably from different parts of Greece. So like for them, that book was actually about representation. Because once they heard the names of the people from their specific region, they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm invested in this epic because my dude was in that war. Like my dude was like literally fought in that. Which I thought was like, oh, okay, that's actually like...
That's amazing.
Like that completely changed my opinion from hating that book to understanding or like having a better sense of it and appreciating it even. Which then became relevant, as you said, like as we were reading on, like they keep doing it more and they say it before they fight one another, and I realized like because they're trying to like get all this glory and honor and fame, which is like the highest sort of honor that they were seeking back in the Greek times.
The big scene of naming names that I really remember, there are two. One is the one where I can't remember if it's Diomedes someone. The one where they list their family tree.
Right.
To each other. I remember really hating that scene and being like, I don't like this. I don't know why this is relevant. Then I remember we were going to have a quiz about that whole family tree, and I was like, this sucks. And then my prof wasn't Leon, and I told Leon about it, and I was like, Leon, I don't understand why this part's relevant, and we're going to have a whole quiz about it. And then he explained it to me, like he was like, oh, because it's really important that you know who you're killing and whose line you're ending, or something like that.
Which is super funny.
And then I literally was like, oh, what? I was like, oh, this is deep.
But that's also funny to me because like in a way, like I feel like if I were in the Trojan War And like somebody came up to me and announced himself to me like, my name is Diabetes. I am the son of blah blah blah. He did this and that and that. And then like I would like be there with a notepad scribbling down all the details. Like
right, like that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You guys, who's taking notes right now?
Like, oh wait, sorry. Do you have any brothers? Oh,
yeah,
you have sisters
you have 12.
Too? Oh, okay, all right. 12 brothers, 12
okay.
sisters. Okay, that's cool.
Great, that's
got it. Now, what are 3 other things about you?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, like, oh my god. And then the second scene where it's my favorite scene where they name names is that bit where Hera and Zeus get jiggy with it in Olympus.
Yeah.
When Hera has to distract Zeus so that her team, so to speak, can have the upper hand in the war. And that's really funny because literally Zeus, she doesn't have to try that hard because Zeus literally barges in and he's like, guess where I've been? I fucked this tree and that goat and this whatever. Like he was naming all these, to make her feel bad. And then she eventually is like, you think you're the only one that has affairs? And then she starts naming all like the mortals that she's ever slept with. And that was like a 2-page scene. I mean, like just the naming parts. I really remember being so like uncomfortable because my prof was kind of old and he was reading out that part and I was like, oh, I kind of understand what's going on, but I hope he doesn't explain.
I feel like it's one of those scenes where like if it was so vividly recited or told and you were in the room, you'd be like, should we leave? Or I feel really... like this is too personal. This is
literally, And then literally right after they name all those names, they immediately like bone down.
Oh boy.
And my prof said so and I was like, I hate this. But yeah, so that's what life was like in university for us.
Right.
That being said, when this book first came out, I was actually in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came out in 2012, so I would have been a junior in high school, and you were like second year in college?
Yes, this was around what year? Sorry, I forgot.
Sorry, 2012.
2012, I was a nope, yeah, I was a junior. Whoops. Yeah. Regardless, sophomore, junior.
Okay.
That's when the book came out.
Okay. But then, like, had you heard about it?
I had not heard about it particularly, which is funny because I was on Tumblr.
Right. But to be fair, we were on very different parts
different
of
segments.
Tumblr.
Yes, very different segments. I was on.
I mean, it did intersect, I think, with all the Doctor Who, but
yeah, I was on the segment of Tumblr that was very focused on Lost, which was my favorite TV show growing up in high school, and then also like mixtape Tumblr, I guess, which is just like how I figured out my taste in contemporary music.
Yeah, but when this came out, I was in high school, but I hadn't read it until, I think, years later. Like, I was well into uni. I think that was, like, at the end of second year.
Mm-hmm.
But I had taken the Iliad class in first year. So I had already read the Iliad. I didn't read the Odyssey. I know you read the Odyssey.
That I did.
Yeah, you were very fortunate for that. But I did not have that.
I can sort of intuit the kind of content I guess you were seeing on Tumblr related to Song of Achilles, but do you remember like what were the posts that sort of made you aware to it on Tumblr? Oh
yeah, because like people, I mean, because there were a lot of it was mostly like posts making fun of Achilles, for being a little bitch.
Yeah, go on.
Because also, sorry, I will say that I think I will go back and forth between pronouncing their names as Achilles and Patroclus.
Yeah, I don't worry. I keep thinking of Achilles as well because that's what they were named.
That's how we said it.
Yeah, that's how we said it in college.
Yeah, because I think our translation spelled it out like that, right?
Yes.
The Fitzgerald one?
Yeah.
The best one. Just kidding. No, it's not. We don't know that.
We'll see.
Anyway, so on Tumblr, there were a lot of posts about them about Achilles and Patroclus because they were gays. And you know how Tumblr likes them gays. So there are a lot of like fan mixes about them. So there was also on that specific side of mixtape Tumblr that was just for like your ships. I saw a lot of that, and it was a lot of, or if there was a fan mix for like a character specifically, all of Achilles' songs would be like Marina and the Diamond songs.
So you did know what the songs of Achilles were.
Yeah. Because I remember I had one. I downloaded one off of what's it called? 8 tracks?
Right.
Is that what it's called?
Right. Yeah.
I almost said 8 cuts, but that's burgers. So
yeah, I'll have the Achilles burger.
yeah. I'll have this with a side of hubris, please.
I'll have a hecatomb.
Hecatomb
hecatomb roast.
Jeez. Oh my god, and it's like their meat fest.
Yeah, and like they
oh
only
my god.
they only serve.
Should we open like a really old school classical Greek burger place?
Right.
Anyway, so there was a lot of that. But I didn't really know who they were. I knew that they were like Greek gods and stuff. And I had very minor knowledge of Greek mythology at this point because I was first and foremost on Tumblr Secondly, I was on Tumblr for the Les Mis fandom, and in high school, and this is one of the reasons why I think I didn't read Song of Achilles right away, because I was still so heavily invested in Les Mis, and in Les Mis canon, there are allusions to Greek gods, like Angelus is always compared to Apollo, or like I'm a bad stan. It's been years, guys. I'm very old now. So I knew them, when I saw like Achilles and stuff, like their names, I knew that they were like Greek mythology, but I didn't really know who they were or what they did or why they were like a thing. And then when I read the Iliad, it also kind of didn't sink into my head what their relationship could have been, especially since the Iliad starts literally on the 9th year of the war, right? Or like the
that's actually a very important talking point that I kind of want to bring up with relation to at least the Iliad, like comparing the Iliad and Song of Achilles. Because like since both of them are about the Trojan War, even actually arguably the Odyssey is also about the Trojan War to some extent. Like,
I would agree.
And even the Aeneid, a lot of what makes having separate works about this one particular event important is, and this is something that I learned while I was taking that same classic literature class, learning a lot about what structure can tell you about what the story is really about, like what they choose to omit and what they choose to include. Like even when I was reading the Iliad, I sincerely thought the whole epic was going to include like the end of the Trojan War. No, even the end.
Oh, the end of the war.
I thought it was gonna end. Like, I was like, I remember I was going through the like last two books, and I was like thinking like, when is the horse gonna come in? When is Achilles gonna die? All these things. Like I was like just remembering the 2004 film. And like notably, the Iliad does not feature the horse at all. Doesn't even end with Achilles dying. The last scene of the Iliad, which I think is the best scene, is
Priam.
it's
Priam, right?
It's Priam arriving
Priam
at the tent. And then he's begging for Hector's body.
Yes.
Which
agree.
This and kind of and it kind of like lays out like, oh, this whole epic was actually, it was less about the Trojan War itself and more about like what everyone lost along the way, regardless 100%. Of which side they were on, and all these whims of the gods and the men who were temperamental about it. Like you got all of that from where Homer's epic ended, and in the same way. Like with Song of Achilles, you get that a lot from where she starts the story and even where she ends it. She ends it like way later than I thought she was going to end it.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. And I was going to mention also that like a similar thing, because Madeline had mentioned in interviews that like, because when people usually ask her about like her research process, she always says that that's like the most difficult part. Like even if she's a classics major and that's what she's been doing her whole life,
right?
It was still a chance for her to be able to pick what to include, because obviously like the Iliad itself is a canon of that specific time period, but then everything that happens before and after, that's like multiple stories already from other different people and other different, poets or writers. So she really like made a huge effort to pick and choose what she thought would be relevant to the story that she wanted to tell.
Right. Like,
And
wasn't
for
there
the people that she wanted to bring it.
like wasn't there a thing that she was saying that like it was sort of hard for her to choose stuff from Achilles' earlier life because there are a lot of different
Yeah.
stories about his life.
Yes.
And she had to choose the ones that were like relevant to his story arc in the novel.
Yeah.
Which I think is a
Yeah.
pretty interesting and also smart way, I guess, of looking at how
Yeah.
you structure the novel on something that already is pre-existing.
Right. Okay, sorry. Can I just what this? I just thought of this right now, but this kind of is making me think of like how film adaptations of like comics are also made.
How do you mean?
Like, because that just you saying that bit about Achilles. Now he has different stories
Right. Okay. Yeah.
pre-Troy. That made me think of like, sorry, but I'm gonna have to talk about him. Made me think of Bucky because his like original story is not what they eventually used for MCU. Like his very first appearance in the comics, he's not even from New York City. He didn't grow up with Steve. He's like from Illinois or something like that. Like super far from New York, super far from Steve. They only meet when they're like well into adulthood. But I think it wasn't until the canon which they ended up using for the MCU films that they kind of decided that they would use the one where Steve and Bucky grew up together and everything.
Right.
And then eventually adapt Winter Soldier.
Right.
Because that story arc came up way later. But like he and Steve were always friends, but like and then there was always going to be like Civil War, but then there were always different, ways of getting there.
Right. And similarly, like I initially thought you were going to say like someone like Spider-Man who like
oh yeah, why did you I mean he was the second person I thought of, but also
like,
honestly, let's be real, I don't know that much about him compared to
I mean,
how much
like,
I know about
like,
Bucky.
No, but like the very bare essential about Spider-Man's origin is never even shown in the MCU. They just assume that that he was bitten by a spider and that Uncle Ben died. When they show Peter for the first time, he's already Spider-Man. So I thought that's what
in
MCU.
MCU, yeah, that's true.
They never even mentioned that Aunt May had a husband before. They just think she's been taking care of him.
They don't even say what happened to his parents.
Right.
Unlike in the Andrew Garfield one.
Right. But I think also the sort of like multiplicity of stories is also helpful for us to like kind of view our abstract notion of the myth in among like many different angles and many different ways. Like there are aspects of it, like the tapestry of the Iliad is so rich, it has so many full characters that you could essentially like write like a one-off story or a one-off play about one particular person and kind of just like focus on what was this person's deal.
Yeah.
So like
exactly.
kind of I guess to like illustrate that, like do you remember when we went to Ateneo with my sister and then we watched a play about a character who is like affected, or a set of characters who is affected. It's basically the family of Agamemnon and how they're affected by the circumstances of the war. That Iphigenia is sacrificed at the altar to
but in that play she wasn't sacrificed at the altar.
Right. So it was like really like again like very different perspectives, but to reveal like sort of this more abstract stuff.
Yes, and I also want to mention that when we had seen that play, I think I had just reread the book. So I remember afterwards I had Googled the play. And it was a play that was written in the 2000s, actually. So that's a fairly modern play, or like a fairly modern script. But then it wasn't until I researched all of their names and stuff that I realized who they were. And then I remembered what had happened in Song of Achilles. And I was like, holy shit. What? That's what happens, pala. But yeah, in that play that we watched, and we'll get into how it is in Song of Achilles later, but in the play that we watched, Iphigenia is sacrificed on the island, if I'm not mistaken. Like her hometown. She's sacrificed there.
Right.
And she's not brought to where... She never meets Achilles.
Right.
She doesn't even know who he is.
Right.
And I really remember her also knowing that she was gonna be sacrificed because they had told her that it was like her destiny or something.
Right.
So whereas in Song of Achilles, that of course doesn't happen. And I think also another thing is that I mean, like going back to like our classes, is that I remember the first time I read it, I recognized immediately when it was like the official start of the Iliad.
Right.
Because again, the Iliad starts mid like shouting match.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
Between
Agamemnon.
Achilles and Agamemnon.
Yeah. Right. So Amanda, even though we're both quite familiar with the subject material, I wouldn't say that either of us are really experts on Homer,
No.
which is a big problem because
Not at all.
this whole miniseries so far is just about Homer.
Indeed.
But what if we
If
had
only there was
a friend who
okay.
was an expert at Homer?
That's true. What if we had a friend?
If only there
that
was a
so
friend.
Crazy. If only there was somebody who not only was a friend, but maybe even taught the subject.
Yeah. Whoa, did you hear that? That sounded like someone was knocking on the door of the Req Room.
Indeed.
Let's tell him to come in. Come in!
Did you just assume the person's gender?
No. Hey, I think this person's opening the door.
It seems clear from the kind of Greek in which the Homeric poems are written that the main text preserved by the Alexandrians came from Athens, where Homer could be heard almost daily in recitals by rhapsodies, professional artists who strung together choice passages from the epics, learning by heart parts of the inherited text, and, in a way not entirely approved of by the traditionalists, selling their services for dinner parties and or entertainments. Homer was also used as a manual in school, the poems treated as tales of great men and women, of nobility in crisis, and of the choices people must make when faced with the deepest challenges of their lives. Homer for classical Athens was an encyclopedia of moral choice. It was also performed with enormous elaboration at the 4-yearly festival of the Panathenaea, where, at least according to Eustathius, a 12th century Byzantine bishop of Thessalonica, the reciters of the Odyssey wore sea purple and of the Iliad earth red costumes, the purple on account of Odysseus's wanderings at sea, the red on account of the slaughter and bloodshed at Troy. If the Odyssey men were soaked in the royal purple dye of the Phoenicians, and those of the Iliad in the blood of the heroes, nothing could be clearer about the role Homer played in classical Athens' idea of itself. At their most holy and self-conscious moments, the Athenians gathered for total immersion in the Homeric stories, drinking up the tales from which most of the great tragedies drew their plots and characters, thinking of Homer as the source of what they were, as Athenians. Hi, my name is Leon Peckson, and I once taught Homer to undergrad students, and by no means a scholar of Homer, more of an average geek who had the story foisted on him and who discovered perhaps one of the greatest stories that he had ever imagined through the words of the poet Homer. Homer is said to have been a poet who lived somewhere beyond the 9th century BC. Likely, he was a bard, a teller of songs that were sung by many and from generation to generation. In other words, his stories would never have been his own. But it is likely the case that his telling was the most compelling, was the most insightful. His songs were the strongest songs. He is known for 2 great stories, 2 great epics, the Iliad, the story of the warrior Achilles, who is insulted by his king Agamemnon, and who for that reason sits out the battle at Troy, but not only that, begs the gods for the slaughter of his countrymen, the Achaeans, so that all may know what a mistake Agamemnon had made when he had insulted Achilles, and so that all may know how sorely missed a warrior of his caliber would be. Achilles only returns after his dear friend Patroclus, who begs to join the war, feeling great compassion for his fellow Achaeans, is himself killed in battle. Achilles returns to the war, turns the tide of battle, but notably the end of the story is not the end of the Trojan War, because that's not the story of the epic. The end of the story is the resolution that Achilles comes to when, after having slaughtered the great Trojan hero Hector, he is begged by Hector's father Priam, the great king of Troy, in private for Hector's body, and in an act of mercy and compassion returns the body of Hector, which is quite noteworthy because it is Hector who kills his dear best friend Patroclus. So that's the Iliad. And then the second great book, or great epic that he'd written, was the Odyssey, which recounts the return journey of Odysseus, one of the great generals who was present with Achilles and Agamemnon at the Trojan War, who decides not to return directly home to Ithaca, but travels here, there, and everywhere, and in a series of almost comedic episodes, gets in the most horrific trouble, and all in the name of experiencing things for experience's sake. A few weeks ago, I watched again Saving Private Ryan, and when I say again, the first time I'd seen it was in 1997, I think, 98, when it first come out, and I'd never seen it again until a few weeks ago. And watching Saving Private Ryan, I was struck by the masterpiece, cinematic masterpiece that it is. Every single frame crafted, structured, composed so well by Steven Spielberg, and I couldn't help but recognize that and see that the enjoyment I had gotten from watching Saving Private Ryan was almost identical, akin to the enjoyment I had drawn from the Iliad. In other words, there was in the Iliad that I had read and the Iliad that I had taught the same kind of attention to creating ironic parallels, the same attention to humanizing the most inhumane carnage in the middle of war, the same layered composition of scenes, scenes calling back to previous scenes and echoing previous scenes, and in that echo creating meaning. And so I'd set alongside Homer, or rather, I'd attributed Steven Spielberg's success to Homer, because Homer had gone and done it first, centuries ahead of Spielberg. But I found myself worried because the Iliad that I'd read, a translation into English by Robert Fitzgerald, was so composed as to conjure in the imagination scenes as detailed, scenes as layered, scenes as well composed as Spielberg's masterpiece, Saving Private Ryan. But it led me to wonder if we could, and if there might be any way of doing this, or any data to base such conjecture on, if we could return to the times of Homer, or the times of the oral tradition in which Homer is said to have existed, was the experience of Homeric poetry, Homeric singing, or storytelling alike, or to anything like Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan? Picking up a book from which I read the passage earlier, The Mighty Dead by Adam Nicholson, which I hope you can all pick up. You can actually find it in Fully Booked. His explorations seem to suggest that Homer's storytelling tradition is far removed from the storytelling tradition that we belong to, our cinematic storytelling tradition. And this worries me because, as I say, reading Homer had always been to me a cinematographic experience. The whatever it is Fitzgerald had translated, the result of that was to create in my mind and my imagination scenes as cinematographically compelling as Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg, dare I say, Quentin Tarantino. Many, of course, what we know Homer for, the dactylic hexameter or hexameter, is lines composed of 6 dactyls, a strong charging rhythm that was quite regular and varied only slightly from line to line. But in addition to this repeated pattern, there were many repeated phrases, repeated formulas that allowed a singer who was singing this to fill up lines with shreds of verse that matched or fit the dactylic hexameter, the overarching pattern or overarching metrical pattern of the poem. Now, what does this mean? Is the Homer that I had read, loved, and studied and taught really the Homer of antiquity? In other words, is there a break in the tradition? And was he, as there was a great tendency for this, a cleaning up of Homer, a domesticating of Homer, so as to make him more pleasing aesthetically to our sensibilities? And this seems to be what this American scholar from the 1930s, Milman Parry, seems to discover in the metrical rhythms and the repeated formulae of the Greek that he is studying. Now, what seems to redeem or save Homer from something so obscure and so impossibly inarticulate as repeated lines charging forward is Parry's trip that he had made in the course of his studies somewhere in the 1930s to Yugoslavia to watch and to listen to, rather, this living tradition still present at the time in Yugoslavia of bard singers, where there seemed to be, in the repetition of the singer, in the improvised moment of the singer's performance, in which he draws on a story that had been told and heard before, and whose audience eagerly anticipated moments, not just for the fact of their telling or the brute fact of what the plot points, but also for the careful construction of sentiment, the careful construction of character and scene. There seemed to be a synthesis of the singer in the moment, improvising, using repeated meters and patterns to craft a compelling tale and a compelling story. In other words, it was not so rigid and so hard bound as repetition would suggest or could suggest. And what's interesting is as they traipsed across Yugoslavia, they found themselves being referred to by villagers, by locals, to certain key singers, or singers renowned for the depth of their telling of the same story. In other words, these are stories that they'd all heard before, but this one tells it better. This one tells it with greater depth. This one tells it with such a charisma that one is held, locked in, connected. And that fame takes place in the context of a tradition of repeated stories, repeated formulae, repeated meters, right? And yet, in spite of all of this, this repetition, there seems to be room for individual genius that can take all of this as material and make of it a compelling tale, so compelling as to make a name for themselves. And Perry locks onto a certain Yugoslavian singer named Avdo Medjodovic, who is referred to by almost all of the people in Yugoslavia as the best singer of them all. And in listening to Avdo and hearing him, he saw in the contemporary world an incarnation, some formulation, some sociological formulation of what Homer could have been. The storyteller who uses as material formulae drawn from a tradition, repetitive meters, but in such a way as to be more compelling than the rest, more insightful than the rest, and in such ways to have a name made for themselves. And so, like, to go back to that question, was Homer one person, or is it just a mass of stories that have been compiled and then just sort of cleaned out, nicely stitched together, a bit of quilt work, a kind of passable Frankenstein of stories? What Milman Perry seems to suggest is, no, this was the individual genius of a great storyteller whose fame was such that an entire culture could refer back to him, or would refer back to him, as they told the stories that all of their tradition would have told, but which they would have known to have only been told in a meaningful and in a way worth remembering by a certain blind man named Homer. So that's that's what I have to say. How to close this? And that's what it's all about. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-dang.
Oh, that was really insightful. Thank you.
Oh, that was crazy.
We
So
want to
good.
thank you, our friend Leon Peckson. Thank you so much for everything you
Leon,
shared
as
with
always.
us about
I missed him a lot.
Homer.
It was so good to have him here.
Absolutely.
This room of Rex.
Oh, and as you can see right now, he's now standing up from the seat.
Is he?
Yes,
I see it now.
He's on his way back to the door. He's going to open the double doors now.
Yeah, we have double doors in our. It's crazy. We have these beautiful French doors.
And he's now closing the doors.
Oh my god.
Whoa, that was quite heavy.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I think we gotta fix the doors here at the Req Room.
Okay, so onto the novel. The Song of Achilles, as I mentioned earlier, it came out around 2012, and it immediately was like a bestseller. It was a New York Times bestseller. It was a huge hit. Again, it went super viral on Tumblr, and I'm really inclined to think that was like a huge factor in it gaining all that recognition, and all the awards, because she won the 2012 Orange Prize for Fiction for it. That award is now called the Women's Prize for Fiction.
Right.
And she was also shortlisted that same year for the Stonewall Writer of the Year, which is a big deal also. And from that latter award, or like shortlisting alone, you can tell like how impactful it was to a certain demographic, because it was so clearly, gay in ways that like other, I think, more famous adaptations of the story or of anything that mentions Achilles and Patroclus have been. Like, for example, in the Troy movie, I said I haven't watched it, but in it, aren't they cousins?
Oh, that I
Or
don't
something?
remember. I think that's one
I
of the parts I
remember-
skimmed over.
Yeah, okay. And the only reason why I super remember this is because it used to be brought up in, like, fanfic a lot. Like, Les Mis fanfic. They would make fun of, like, Troy for
Wait,
having
what?
them as
Hey,
cousins.
hang on.
I'm not kidding.
They made fun. Okay, I know that this is
Like
possible in fan fiction, but they made
Yeah.
fun. Les Mis
No, like,
made
it would...
fun
No,
of
no,
the
Les Mis...
movie Troy.
Like, yes, like, modern AU. Like, it would be like a modern AU.
Yeah, it's like I got so
Les
jarred. I'm
Mis
like,
fic.
wait,
Okay.
so when during their revolution did they have the
They
time
had
to be like,
It
hey,
was during the
Wolfgang
downtime
Peterson.
behind the stack of chairs.
Yeah, Wolfgang Peterson just
wall
put
of
out a new movie.
chairs.
Brad Pitt's in it, guys.
Yeah.
We gotta see it.
I know.
It's like,
cousins sharing a tent, sacre bleu. No. But, like, that's, testament to it that this book kind of makes it clear.
yeah, because I was gonna say,
And
like, did you see that tweet
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
was like, it was like a thread of tweets. The main point of it was that the text of the Iliad is rich enough that you can actually get a lot of different readings from it without necessarily having to contradict the text. Like, you can
Yes.
see them as cousins or even brothers, but you can also
Yes.
see them as lovers.
As
It doesn't have to
lovers,
be
yeah.
one exclusively. The text is
Yeah.
rich enough that it allows you to activate
Yes.
your own experience into the text. So in that case, like, you know...
Which I think is
Mhm.
supposed to be the point.
Right, exactly. Like, at least in this one, it's making it explicitly clear, like, yes, they're going to make love, and it's gonna be beautiful. And
Mhm.
that's fine. Like, that's
You
one
are
way
brave.
to... Yeah, that's one way to read the Iliad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not to like I guess like put down or like downgrade the status of Song of Achilles in any way.
No, not
but
all.
it's
No, I completely understand what you're
recognizing,
saying.
yeah, it's recognizing there's that
The
aspect of it,
flexibility.
right, and how that feeds into, or how it like kind of informs the reaction that Achilles has when he finds out
Yeah.
that Patroclus has died.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's two major parts of like the Iliad that like people really focus on when it comes to their relationship and where people like start to question what they really were. And it's
Right.
obviously one when Patroclus passes away. And I mean is murdered. And another is that scene where Odysseus is like, everyone knows why you guys sleep in the same tent.
Yeah.
Because some people read that part as like him accusing them of like being like guys, it's okay, we know that you're like boning down. But then there are other people who are like, who have read it like, oh, because it's a familial thing, because you're very close, you grew up together, you're cousins, like that. So that's the adaptability that I was thinking of. Going into like what I said, that it depends also on like how you teach it, because if you just teach it straight, then obviously no one's gonna get it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
But then if you like emphasize that flexibility of the story, the universality of it,
Yeah.
then that's what's gonna make it really important to people. And like Madeline herself has said that like the reason, and I'm not like directly quoting her, I'm paraphrasing, but the reason that we continue to study classics is not, because we think it's necessary out of like prestige or because it is a classic, but it's because like at the end of the day, it's like a really universal story that everybody has to like experience, because the Iliad at its core, I think, for me, it's about like the follies and hubris and how bad people can get and how selfish they can get when it comes to the things they want out of their life or the things that they expect out of their own life.
Right.
And like I remember also our professors, I don't know about your professor, but my professor and Leon has said that it's like a cautionary tale more than anything.
Oh, yeah,
and that's
absolutely,
why
absolutely.
Homer, consistently recited it. And, that makes it like the oldest guilt trip cuento.
Right.
Like, can you imagine this old blind man
Yeah.
being like, okay, children, this is why you should be a good person. So all she's doing in her works is essentially highlighting other aspects of these stories that are so universally known, because you know all the things that happen that in the Iliad, but again, no one really has a set canon on what happened before and after.
Right. To that point, actually, what you just reminded me also is that in that same classic literature class, there's that famous scene in the Iliad where they have to forge a new shield for Achilles. And I think this is like right after Patroclus has died, so he's already like in his divine rage.
This is after Patroclus dies,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So they're forging a new shield for
Yes.
him. And during the discussion for that book, our prof let us also read The Shield of Achilles by W.H. Auden. And even there, like you
Yes.
see as well
Which is
another reinterpretation where the images that are
Yes.
emblazoned on the shield, they're engravings
Yeah.
of modern war images. So not
I
so
can't
much the
remember if
Trojan.
it was Leon who made me read this.
Yeah.
But yes, I totally know what you mean. Yeah. One of the things, or like the backlash that Madeline has gotten with this is, one, it's gay. And two, a lot of people are like, well, she's like this scholar from New York and she's very highly regarded in her field, but she's out here writing fanfic for children. Like I have seen comments be all like, it's not my thing because it reads like YA. And I'm like, why would, people obviously say that like with disdain. I actually don't think that it's listed as YA or like categorized as YA because I remember Cersei was not.
Yeah, I mean there are elements of it that made me think of YA, but especially towards the end, it does not feel like it kind of grows out of it.
Yes,
almost.
I get what you mean. Yeah,
they're like roughly our age when the book ends.
Yeah, that's actually true. Oh my gosh, whoa! I just had like a existential crisis for like a split second. Anyway, but like at the same time, there are so many other classical works out there that are essentially fanfic that nobody wants to admit is fanfic.
Right.
So like, what makes her any different besides that she's, I don't know, a woman? And I don't think that should make this seem any less legitimate. And also, even if it wasn't fanfic and it was just straight YA, that also doesn't make it any less legitimate. Like, this changed how a lot of people read classics. I think I remember seeing on Tumblr that a lot of people said that this is what made them want to take classics or like learn Latin or study Greek mythology. So, you can't deny her influence in that way because she brought something so, as we said, inaccessible in a lot of ways or like really intimidating to like high schoolers.
Right.
But okay, I will also say that I want to mention that tweet that went viral recently that you showed me about her, because okay, let's be real, she's really popular and she's very good at what she does because, again, she highlights these moments and like players in the stories that don't really get their due diligence, and we'll go more into that in our second episode of this miniseries. But like, someone pointed out on Twitter that she had a weird line about was it Patroclus' skin or Achilles' skin? I also forgot because I think when I saw the line in the book when we were rereading this, I literally was like, yeah, okay. I went to the next line immediately.
Right.
But somebody had pointed out that it was weird of her to say that their skin was like freshly pressed olive oil.
Right.
And but freshly pressed olive oil is green.
Right.
Straight up green. And so part of me was like, oh, right.
So they were the Hulk? This was Planet Hulk?
Exactly, this was Planet Hulk? What is this? But yeah, I guess, as much as I would love to laud her, forever and be all like, she started so much, it's like, okay, at the end of the day, she's still a white woman.
Right.
In America.
Alright, so
okay,
the book...
So...
This book is told from the perspective of Patroclus. And it even begins with his early life, before he has even met Achilles. Like, he has a brief encounter with him in his early life.
7 when the book starts.
Right, exactly. And I actually want to jump on that and kind of like address what is sort of like, it's not really a grievance or beef that I have with the book, but it's sort of like a gripe. And it's very nitpicky, honestly. Like, but I almost like wonder why this was not just called the Song of Patroclus. Because...
Yeah, no, I see what you mean.
Because, like, in a lot of ways...
Yeah,
the Iliad,
it's not really about...
Right. In a lot of ways, the Iliad is the Song of Achilles. To the point that again, what I was saying earlier, the fact that the Iliad ends with Achilles and Priam making peace and surrendering the body of Hector so that they can grieve over their
Grieve over
loss,
him.
that speaks to the positive, like, or sort of like the redemptive aspect of Achilles in that war, which is, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
like jumping way ahead, kind of how this book ends, like in a metatextual way, it kind of implies like we should remember the positive parts of him. So if anything, the Iliad is really
Right.
the Song of Achilles, and this one, because it's so deeply entrenched in the perspective and in the thoughts and in the opinions and feelings of Patroclus towards Achilles, I almost feel like she could have really named it the Song of Patroclus, and I would have felt like less,
Yeah.
like I guess like peeved by
Confused?
it. Yeah, peeved by it, confused by it.
Yeah. But I think also, if she didn't, I wonder how easily it would have gotten popular.
Sure.
Because let's be real, not really people. Like, what if this was just a marketing move, you know?
Right, but then again,
title Rise,
I don't know, like, at least when the way you're describing how people were kind of jumping on it on Tumblr through, like, mixtapes and stuff, is always kind of referring to them through their individual characters and through their pairings. So I almost feel
Relationship,
like the title would not really have done much to affect its popularity. But at least, like, thinking of it in
that's
terms
fair.
of it as a unified whole. And that's also, I
Yeah.
think, that's the
I
point.
actually never thought about this.
Like, that's sort of the point that she's kind of bringing through by giving Patroclus the main voice in
Yeah.
this novel, is that
Right.
she's giving it another perspective through which we can understand the relationship between him and Achilles, as
Yeah.
well as understanding who Achilles is. Like, as much as his life is centered around Achilles, like, to kind of say that it's Achilles' song alone and not Patroclus is kind of like
Yeah.
almost pushing him aside, which I guess is maybe
Yeah.
also the argument for that being the point, because
Okay,
Patroclus
right.
is like repeatedly reminded over and over again that Achilles is the one
Like,
who will be
he's-
remembered in history. He's the
Yeah.
one who will be glorified, not
Yeah.
you. So if
Yeah.
anything, like Madeline is kind
Maybe
of just
that's
like,
her being like, yeah.
yeah, she's kind of like putting down Patroclus with the title of the
Yeah.
which I
She
think
was
is
like,
kind of funny.
gonna drive it home.
Like, okay, it's like this guy's had enough,
Right.
please.
Yeah.
But
he needs to remember who he is.
right. So, but like, yeah, it starts out in his home kingdom. He is a very cruel father, King Menoetius. Menoetus, I'm really sorry. But then,
Menoetius, that sounded super Jewish.
but like even then, like the stakes for the Trojan War are kind of set up already from the get-go, because within the first two chapters, they're made to go to Sparta for this huge like betrothal ceremony where Helen has to choose a suitor. And, you know, obviously, like, that ends up with Helen eventually choosing Menelaus. But then, at the same time, you also get a heads up of all the key players, people who will be key players in the Trojan War afterwards. Like, you'll see Odysseus is a huge presence in that thing, even though he's not actively seeking the courtship of Helen. He plays like a huge role there. Ajax is also there. Philoctetes is also there. Who, like, the same?
Literally,
are we talking about the same guy from Disney's Hercules?
Like, he might be.
I think so. And then, like, but again, Disney really just like readapted his character to be like a fawn.
Yeah, that's true. Because but then, like, isn't he the one who his offering to Helen or their family is a bow from Hercules?
Yeah, so like he is to Hercules what Patroclus will eventually be to Achilles, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Patroclus,
but at this point, Hercules is already
yeah, like he's already like a legendary.
I
cannot say, but he is already like a legendary figure at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like to them, he's from the generation before, so Philoctetes is already like an old man. And Patroclus himself is even offered up as a suitor, but you know, like this guy doesn't really.
Not there.
Yeah, he doesn't really know what's going on, and
because he thinks I'm 9.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, he says
literally.
Yeah. But the other crucial thing that happens at the betrothal ceremony is like they kind of have this call to honor where Odysseus like advises the father of Helen that, oh, okay, here's what's gonna happen if you let her choose, so that it will be an honorable choice. Like, then we can all say like, yeah, like obviously, like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But then all
Yeah.
of you have to honor that choice and swear an oath that if somebody tries to go against her wishes, then you will defend her honor by joining or taking up arms. And so everyone swears to it, Patroclus included.
But he's also like, thanks, I'm 9.
Right, again, thanks, I'm 9. She chooses Menelaus, and then Menelaus, and then that's kind of it. Like, they go home disappointed. Right after that, Patroclus gets into this incident where he accidentally kills a boy. And that becomes sort of
to be fair, he was being bullied.
Right, he was being bullied by a boy, and like in self-defense, he pushes him, and the boy like falls against like a rock, which like cracks his skull open.
And then he...
Yeah, it like traumatizes Patroclus for a good part of his life. At least it stays with him until like I think he's barely thinking about it when
they're
already in Troy. Yeah. But like it's with him for quite a long time. And because he can't really defend himself and his father hates him, he gets exiled to the kingdom of Phthia, which is ruled by Peleus. And the story that's well known is that Peleus was like this guy who's like really loyal to the gods. He swore fealty to them, and kind of as a reward, they offered one of the lower goddesses to
be his wife.
To be his wife. And that was like sort of unwilling on her part. So essentially, like he rapes Thetis, the goddess Thetis, and their child is the half godson Achilles, whom Patroclus had seen years earlier in like an Olympic contest where he was like, he won a race.
Yeah.
And like the idea is that Priam like adopts a lot of kids who are kind of cast off by their families, and he kind of just raises them as his foster son. So like Patroclus falls into that, where he's along with all these other boys who are very competitively seeking the attention of Achilles. This was actually the part where I felt like it was most like YA. Because it felt like, oh, okay, this kid's just been sent off to military school.
Yeah.
He has a lot of feelings. He doesn't want to be here. All the kids are bullying him. But they're also, like, trying to, like, buddy up
At
in
this
a
point,
macho
he should
way.
literally be, like, 10 or something.
Yeah,
10 or
and
11.
they literally have, like, a cafeteria. I mean, it's a caf, but it's a mess hall.
The mess hall.
Yeah,
I
which is where, like, all
I
of them
also
are
pictured
converging.
it like a mess hall.
Yeah, it is a mess hall. But then, like at the same time, like Achilles is like sort of seeing like, oh, who's this lonely guy who's this emo child who like I remember meeting, but he's always like very by himself. And like what causes them to kind of like encounter, like Achilles is the one who comes up to him when Patroclus is like feeling really despondent. He misses like training, so Achilles comes up to him and is like, hey, I noticed you weren't at training earlier. What's the deal? And then Patroclus...
No, he didn't notice. No. It was actually that the coach, so to speak, made sumbong to the king.
Got it. Yeah.
And then Achilles heard about it, and then he immediately knew that the next day they would look for Patroclus and punish him. And he didn't want that for some reason. Like there was something in his gut that was telling him like, this person should not be like physically.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think everyone kind of already knew why Patroclus was there.
Right.
That's why he also got kind of more withdrawn than he initially was, because people really avoided him.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of already known that he had killed somebody.
Yeah, which like I guess like from the perspective of the other boys, like their avoidance of him is really like kind of signaling itself as fear of him. Like, oh, we're trying to prove ourselves as like macho guys, like buddies with the prince of this kingdom. But here's the guy who's actually killed another boy. Like I've never been that cold-blooded, and they kind of take that moral high ground from him.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's also sort of what, I mean, not that specifically, but Achilles kind of being ostracized from the other boys, like really sort of endears him to him, and then eventually he helps Patroclus make up an excuse for why he mispracticed, And that excuse is that, oh, he just wanted to accompany Achilles on his training. And this basically like builds up to Achilles asking his father, can I make Patroclus my lifelong companion?
Which is old Greek for husband. No,
the therapon. That's
not yet, but but they're it was customary. Like it wasn't a weird request,
right? It was an interesting,
and like even the dad says, right? He says something that's like, I've offered you many boys before to pick as your companion, but you've never taken one until now. Until it's somebody that I actually don't care for.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that I saw, like when she deploys that word therapon, I realized like, oh, they've been speaking Greek this whole time, and we're just like hearing it as English, which sort of like unlocks the other aspect of it that you know.
That's one of my favorite parts about the book.
Like it's like,
I mean, like how she writes it.
It's if anything, it's the one thing that helps to suggest again the openness of the text. Because then it kind of asks you to rely on her quote unquote translation to give you the spirit of what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Which means to say like not everything that you read here is necessarily 100% one-to-one accurate to what happened. And like some things that she might have taken liberty to, not to say that she didn't do research, but she was able to adapt it from things that people would be able to relate to. And you're kind of seeing it in a translated form. So like this thing that we were saying of like the mess hall and thinking of it almost as a boys' school cafeteria, like that's in a way almost part of the translation that we bring to it as readers.
That's true. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
the whole thing where she does that across the whole novel. Yep. And I love it. Like when she says like she says the word in English, but then like Patroclus says the word in English. It looks like it's English.
Yeah.
But then he notes that he used a specific
word. Don't they have like a specific name for him that means owl? But they never say what the word is or something. Or they say
or something like that. Yeah. And then also when we'll talk about this a bit later, but when they're already in that other island with the girls.
Yeah.
The way that Achilles gets outed in that scene.
Right.
Is that she says something that's in the male gender.
Right.
Or like the gendered form of
that
insult. And like she says like heartbreaker or something like, or heartless, but she says it in the male form.
Yeah.
And that's what makes everyone there
realize. Yeah, which on the other
so good.
Right. On the other hand, like I think that worked to the opposite effect for me. Because whereas like this one of therapon, and then later on hubris. They use the word hubris to
when they use hubris, I'm like
nuance pride. But then like when they did that scene on Skyros where she uses the masculine form of the word, like I got confused because I wasn't necessarily familiar with that aspect of Achilles' life. So I really had to kind of like step away from the text for a bit and be like, wait, what's going on here? What do they think Achilles? What's going on with Achilles? And that's when I learned outside of the text, like, oh, he's being disguised as a handmaiden. I thought he was just there
this whole time. Yeah. Okay. To be fair, Rin, I remember also being kind of confused about that part because the way that Madeline says it in the book for that scene is that Patroclus sees Achilles, and then the way she mentions it is like, I see Achilles, for it is Achilles.
Right.
That's all she says.
Right.
And then it doesn't mention that everyone else is like seems to be under a rouse of some sort.
Right.
And it's not until that bit with what's her name? Diomedes? Oh my god, no, she's female. So Deidamia, sorry. Deidamia. With Deidamia that she says that, and then later Thetis admits that they deceived everyone, that you're kind of just like, oh, it's a girl.
Right.
I mean, it's a man. It's not a girl.
Yeah. So Patroclus, because he becomes Achilles' therapon, it kind of draws the attention of those closest to Achilles to Patroclus. So like one of the things that happens after Patroclus becomes his therapon is that he meets Thetis, who is very like sort of like like threatening to Patroclus, like, hey, I don't want you to like. She's like very much a like helicopter mom. where she's like, I don't want
Truly.
you to ruin like my son's future.
Mhm.
Like, he's here to become the greatest warrior that Greece has ever
Yeah,
known, and
and
you're
she
not gonna.
like specifically says you're gonna die one
Yeah,
day.
she like negs him like aggressively. It's like,
Yeah.
you will be
And like
forgotten, so don't
Patroclus
think.
always describes her, like whenever she shows up, Patroclus always makes sure to mention something about her physicality.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it's because, you know, she's a goddess, or if that's just to emphasize how frightening she really is.
yeah,
And how much he like basically hates her, but is also still terrified of her.
right.
And I also wanted to mention that, like, when I had first read this book, I did a bit of research about like Thetis, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember this was long ago. I haven't since double checked, but I think Madeline's characterization of Thetis in this is like her first really big, like her taking the most liberties.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in other canons, Thetis is very submissive to the situation.
Right.
Like she's not scary at all. Like
Right.
she's a goddess that was offered to Peleus, and she is still not super willing, but she like lets it happen.
Yeah.
Whereas here, Thetis, there was a struggle.
Yeah.
And that eventually led to her having to, you know, be
Like,
assaulted.
yeah.
And then she was forced to stay as like on the island for like a whole year. And then as soon as Achilles was born, she like jumped into the sea again because she never wanted to be with mortals.
Right.
And she always across the novel has such disdain for humans. Like that's why she never really looks at Patroclus. She hates talking to them and stuff like that. Whereas I think in other things she's such a minor god that like she barely has any characteristics.
Right. Like, would you say that, because that was something that I was also kind of getting from at the end, was that she invested so much into this projection of Achilles' success. And
yes.
I wondered if you thought that maybe this was something that she was trying to do to, I guess, like sort of reclaim herself, or like move past what had happened to her.
What happened to her, yeah.
Right, and kind
like,
of...
I don't doubt that she, like, loves her son.
Yes.
But obviously, at the end of the day, she knows that he's half of something that she's not.
Yes.
And she wants to remove that from him.
Right.
You know, it doesn't help also that, like, she is constantly taunted by this prophecy.
Right, because very explicitly, her aspiration is for Achilles is for him to become a god, or to be ascended to the level of the gods, and to shed that human aspect of himself, which he can only apparently achieve through glory. But as you're saying now, like, there is that double-sided aspect of it, which is that he will have to die young in battle for him to reach that status, which is also something that she's not sure that she wants to do. And even Achilles himself, he's very self-aware about that prophecy, to the point of saying, you know what, I'm going to change history. I'm going to be the first ever hero who dies happy. I'm going to be the first ever hero who like grows old. And like the whole time I was just like, oh, honey.
Yeah. Oh, you know, there's so many... if you've read the Iliad first, talaga, and then you read this, there's certain lines talaga where you're just like, oh, you sweet, sweet summer child. Wait till you... get to a specific point in time.
The one that kind of irked me a bit, but which it was so funny, was
the one with Hector.
Yeah, they keep like kind of dragging the point. It's like, why? Hector's never done anything to me, and like because
why would I kill him if he's never done anything?
Yeah, like she kind of like reuses the same phrase over and over again. That it reads quite dryly, but it was almost like sort of kind of like, we get it, like we know he's gonna kill Patroclus.
Yeah, no, but then it was funny because I remember in like one of the second or third times that he says why would I kill Hector? He's never done anything to me. I think he says it in front of Odysseus, and even Odysseus like, oh, come on. Like, Odysseus was like, even if you didn't have a prophecy, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We're going into war, asshat.
Yeah. People die here.
Like, you're gonna kill somebody. Yeah, man. War means literal death.
Yeah. So they turn 30 and they reach puberty, and it's around that time where like they start like developing like romantic feelings for each other. They have a moment where they kiss each other on the
Hells
beach.
yeah.
And they're like, "Oh no, what's happening to my feelings and my body?"
Yeah.
And basically, like after that moment, he's kind of rushed off for the first time away
To the
from
mountain.
Phthia, and he ends up being brought to the cave of Chiron, who's a centaur, and like a legendary like military trainer who's mentored Hercules.
Hercules.
Right. And like Patroclus kind of panics over that because he kind of
And Jason.
yeah. And
Who has the most chill name out of everyone? Sorry, I just have to say. Every time, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of that Mulaney bit where it's like, where he says, how come the wives in Bible stories have really normal names?
Yeah.
Like, here we have Abraham and his wife Kylie. Like, that's what this is. Like, whenever he'd be like, I've taught Hercules. And also Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like he's a legendary trainer, and then Patroclus kind of goes off to follow him after panicking, like, oh, he left without telling me, or nobody told me he left. So he follows him to Mount Pelion to catch up with him, and he does, and they end up like being trained together. So like it was also sort of funny to me that they were kind of like, yeah, you guys swore an oath as Therapons, so I don't see why they wouldn't have told Patroclus right off the bat, like, oh, he's going off for training. Because when he does get to Mount Pelion and he gets into Chiron's cave, Chiron's just like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll train you too, I guess.
I've heard.
You know? Well, yeah, like, we know.
Yeah, and they eventually, or it becomes clear that, before he gets brought to Chiron, what have we been calling him?
Chiron.
Sorry.
I think.
Chiron. I'm so sorry. Chiron. Thetis, like, doesn't she already threaten Patroclus?
Yeah, she's been threatening
really
him on the regular.
Yeah,
like,
on the regular. And
don't
then this
follow him. Don't
this wasn't a specific one because it was right after they kissed.
Yeah.
Achilles runs away. And then he tries to go after Achilles, but then Thetis comes out of nowhere, and she's like, I fucking saw that. And she's like, you need to stop, because he's gonna go somewhere, and you should not even, like, try to follow.
Right.
And Patroclus doesn't really know what that means, and then the next day, when he gets back to the palace, Achilles says that I'm leaving tomorrow for training.
Yeah, that's it.
And then Patroclus wakes up with him gone already, and then he follows him, and then so we're in the mountain.
Yeah, and it's during the mountain. I think the main important thing that happens is that they become like sort of open about their feelings to each other, and they're no longer scared about it.
Oh hell yeah!
Right. So
because and that reason is because as I said earlier, Thetis had seen their first kiss.
Yes.
But in the cave of Chiron, I guess there's something blocking. Maybe that's part of like Chiron's powers.
Yeah.
And he probably did that. But yeah, so
the
that's one of the first.
See them there, and that gives them sort of license to be like, yeah, we're alone now. Like,
we are alone.
What if
now?
We got it?
What
if we get it?
What
if we get it as like probably that was I don't know Greek at all, but I'm assuming that was
that's
using
what
the masculine.
They were saying in Greek. In old Greek, they were like, "What if we
got it us?
What if we got this together?"
But they get it on.
They do.
That's the big thing that happens in Chiron's Mountain, and eventually, like shortly after that, somebody arrives to summon Achilles back to the kingdom because there's been news from Troy, and they're just like, well, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be anything big. It's gonna be like 1 or 2 days, and we'll come back here to Mount Pelion.
Oh, this is the saddest part for me.
It's quite sad.
So sad.
Like, they've been like living this very idyllic life in Mount Pelion, where they're just getting all these gifts every time like Achilles turns a year older. So like for Patroclus, like this is the life. It's fine.
Yeah.
And the
And
fact
he
that they
loves Chiron. He
Right.
literally is like, this man is my father.
Yeah, the one I never
Like,
had.
Literally, yeah. And
And-
I remember one of my favorite lines from that bit is when he says that his triumvirate of like fear is Chiron, Peleus, and Thetis. Like
Right.
he does not want to offend and disappoint any of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, we get it, you got issues. But
Exactly,
respect.
yeah. And like before they go, Chiron kind of like tells Achilles, like he had asked him previously, like, hey, men are gonna ask you if you can fight for them. So what are you gonna say to them? And Achilles is like, I don't really know. And Chiron's like, well, you have to know. Like it's important
Yeah.
for you to know. You have to be prepared for that possibility. So just be prepared for
Yeah.
that. And he like tells Patroclus like, and you are more persistent now. So good for you, kid.
Yeah.
So it's just like that's that.
Yeah. It was really like such a...
Yeah.
And then the fact that Achilles was like, we're gonna come back tomorrow, it's okay.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll stop
Don't
by
worry.
we'll stop by
And then
7-Eleven
they
if you want like a
yeah,
Magnum or
yeah.
something.
Like, you want like a snack? We'll bring you something. Like, they'll bring pasalubong. No, but yeah, like, and it's really sad because they never go back.
Yeah, they never do. They never. That's it.
They
That's the
never
last
do.
time they see Chiron ever again.
Yeah.
So much happens, and this is like already quarter.
I mean, they receive something from him.
Yeah, but like his
Eventually,
like
but
his presence
they
is like
never see
severely
him.
diminished at that point.
Yeah.
Because when they do arrive back at Phthia, they find out like Helen's been taken by Paris of Troy, and what made the crime even more serious in Greek society, as we all know from the Iliad, is that it happened while Menelaus was hosting the Trojans. So they committed a crime against their host, which is like even carried on to like Dante. That's one of the worst crimes you can ever do, right?
Yeah.
So
even I would say in Noli Me Tangere.
Right. So that's a whole thing where they're like, okay, so this is definitely going to escalate to war. Achilles, you are obviously our greatest warrior. You need to lead the war party into battle. That's going to be your whole thing. But like, to the credit of his dad, Peleus is like, but you're an adult now. I'm going to let you decide if you really want to do this. And Achilles, like, and Patroclus have to like reassure each other that like, okay, if we end up having to go, I'll go with you. But like they're both like not really feeling like they want to do it, or they have to go because it's not really their squabble. But at the same time, that also reminds Patroclus like, oh yeah, I have an oath, pala. I have to fulfill an oath, man. So like they're kind of
and remember how when they are having dinner, somebody recites the names of the people, the men who had sworn the oath, and then Patroclus' name wasn't even read as Patroclus. It was read as
like Menoetius' son, the son of Menoetius.
So that would be like Menoetides?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Correct.
So, and then when he says it, literally somebody said, who?
It was like, I'm Star-Lord, man.
Yes, exactly. No, and then Achilles has to be like, what was that? You were there? And then he's like, yeah, I was 9. And Achilles was like, okay, just don't fucking say anything. Like, it's cool. We'll figure this out. And then they eventually figure out that like they don't want to go, but then
what happens then is that Achilles disappears yet again for the second time.
Yes.
And he rushes all over. He tries to find out what the hell happened. And the one who tells him is one of the lieutenants there in Phthia, whose name, by the way, is my favorite spelling of the word phoenix. It's Phoenix.
Phoenix?
Phoenix. I want to pronounce it. I really want to pronounce it. I really want to say Phoenix.
As Phoenix? Okay, we're
so
calling him
good.
Phoenix.
Phoenix, please let him be
I literally
Phoenix.
was supposed to message Leon also and be like, hey, how do you pronounce this? Because he would know.
Because everyone's like, it's Pheonix, right? And then if that's true, like if you want to read it phonetically, I'm like, fuck this, I'm gonna go Phoenix here.
Yeah, it's gonna be Phoenix, my boy. I've been reading it like I'm from New Zealand.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Phoenix. I can't do it. I did it good in my head, but like I'm not gonna do it again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so him,
so he's
who is like
to
the best, by the way.
Yeah. He tells Patroclus, like, oh, he's been taken to Skyros, so you have to go to Skyros. So he goes to Skyros.
No! Wait! Isn't it Peleus who tells him?
Oh, that is correct.
Because
Phoenix only tells him that Thetis was
Phoenix
the one
is the one who was like, Thetis took him, you didn't know, something like that.
Right.
And then he says something like, Peleos didn't tell you. And then that's when he realizes, okay,
that's
they've
right.
been
Correct.
keeping
Sorry.
shit
Yeah,
from
you're
me.
right. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
so, and this part is important because it's also that scene where he confronts Peleus to ask where Achilles has been brought. It's also like one of the biggest moments where Madeline flexes her, like, experience and her credentials.
Right.
Because the way that he asks Peleus is like, what's it called? Supplication?
Yes. Yeah. He does like
So
that pose
it's like a
where
whole
he's
thing.
like kneeling in front of Peleus.
He's kneeling and really close to him
and holding his knee and his
he
chin.
holds him. Yes, correct, like that. And I was like, whoa, this is so specific.
Yeah.
I don't even think there's a moment in like the Iliad mismo where that happens. So that's another thing also where like you see these bits of like their culture that you probably wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Yes.
That aren't necessarily related to war. So, and that's how Peleus becomes kind of, what do you call that? Obligated to tell him the truth.
Right.
And so he says that he's in...
It's been Skyros.
Skyros.
Yeah.
Skyros?
And then, I don't want to say Skyros.
Okay.
But
Skyros, sister.
okay.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
So over at Skyros, the things we have already mentioned, that there's a whole encounter with the Princess Deidamia, and that Achilles has been disguised as one of Deidamia's handmaidens. But there's like a whole ruse where they eventually figure that out. And there are more things that are revealed. And the most important of that is that Achilles has apparently been married off to Deidamia, and that Deidamia is bearing, or is supposed to bear Achilles' child. Right.
But even her dad didn't know this.
Yeah. So
like the only people who really knew were Deidamia and Achilles and
Thetis.
Of course,
Yeah.
Thetis, because she was the one who orchestrated the whole thing.
Exactly. And like that was sort of like the insidious thing that Thetis did, is she really manipulated them to kind of like follow through with that plan, where she was like telling Achilles na, okay, if you sleep with this girl, then I'll bring Patroclus over here.
No, she said she'll tell him.
Yeah. And like basically
not even bring him, she'll just tell him.
Yeah. And then Patroclus eventually reveals, like, she never told me shit, man. It was literally your dad who told me that you'd be here.
Yeah.
And like Achilles feels so betrayed.
Like mother.
Literally.
Mother chicken.
Mother.
Yeah.
So that whole thing happens, and like Deidamia, poor girl, is like really like pissed off like with this whole thing. Like, shit, man. Like you
she's really like screaming.
That
part is like the thing that happens though. I think that it's really that whole scene where she loses her mind very publicly is so great, but so painful, but so great.
Yeah.
Like when Achilles and Patroclus recognize each other, Achilles right away throws himself at Patroclus, and Deidamia starts shrieking. She is like screaming her head off, and then the dad's like, what the hell is going on? Why you keep yourself composed? Like, there's no reason for you to shriek or whatever. And then Lycomedes is like, who is the guy? Like, why do you know him? Why do you know our visitor? And Achilles just goes like, he's my husband. And that makes everything worse.
Yeah.
Exponentially worse, because she is screaming louder, and then Thetis shows up, and then again the big reveal happens.
Yeah.
And then more reveals happen.
Yeah.
This is all in 3 pages, by the way.
Yeah,
this is like 3 or 4 pages
that happens here on Skyros. And like the other thing that happens is that eventually like Patroclus also gets to sleep with Deidamia.
Yeah, and that's also a very sad
Yeah, it's
scene.
very, very sad.
It's
like,
annoying at first, but then it becomes...
like
Can I just say, okay, this is also something that Madeline is very good at.
Yeah.
And this will come up again in Circe.
Mm-hmm.
But like in that scene where like Deidamia confronts Patroclus in her rooms, at the beginning it's so annoying. Like, it's really painful to read because she's being super mean. All she's doing is insulting him. She's saying that he's ugly, he probably can't fight. And also, this is another thing. This is a side thing from what I was majorly gonna say, but like, it's like, I love how nobody's questioning that they're husbands.
Right.
It's more like questioning,
It's like, you didn't
like,
tell.
the whole, the whole situation as a whole. And then it turns into her being like, bakit ikaw? You're not even pogi. You know? Like, not even like, you're a man!
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's more like, you're ugly, you're so bony.
Yeah.
And then he is at a loss for words, and she eventually slaps him at one point.
Yeah.
After he says sorry, and she's like, whatever, fuck you. She slaps him. And then from there, it just dips and becomes super nakakaawa. Like, you feel so bad for her. Like, you go from feeling so mad about this girl's behavior into being like, oh, but then at the end of the day, she didn't know. She's super victim to circumstance.
Right, because one of the things that she resents Patroclus for is this idea, like, Achilles will never see me as his wife and the mother of his child because of you. So now I'm going to bear this child that Achilles won't even see as his own son. She's like,
exactly.
Oh my God, that's sad.
And that's super sad, right?
Yeah.
And Madeline tends to do that with female characters a lot. Mm-hmm. Like with Thetis, she does that here also. Like, parang you just hate her so much because you're like, can you stop talking to Patroclus like that? Can you just like be a reasonable thing? She's not a person. I was gonna say person, but can you be reasonable for once in your life? But she can't be because she's a goddess, and also because she has been so victimized by this entire thing since the beginning. The fates have really like fucked her over.
That being said, I think it's interesting to point out how like this is probably the one thing. This is like the one incident throughout the whole book where Thetis seems to exhibit the most power or control over, like as sinister
a situation.
As it is,
agreed.
And like overall, like one thing that made me feel like sort of this felt like very unfamiliar territory because like at least in the Iliad, as we know. Like, the gods are so active there. And even, like, in the Odyssey, like, literally the first scene of the Odyssey is on Olympus, and the gods are arguing with one another. And it's, like, a whole scene. But, like, here, literally the only goddess you ever see is Thetis. You don't see Zeus, you don't see Mercury or Apollo or anyone. They don't disguise themselves as anybody.
Oh, wait, no, you do see Apollo.
Oh, right, no, sorry.
He's there at the end.
Yeah, that's true. But, like, he's barely there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, true.
Whereas,
he literally...
In the Iliad, they were so there the whole time,
yeah, they were there so much that everything happened literally because they were there so much.
Exactly. So, I think, like, that was sort of an interesting, like, decision on her part. I don't know, like, if that's something, like, a challenge that... But, like, the whole idea of... Well, to be fair, like, even later on when they're trying to get to Troy and they do all these things like the sacrifices and like the priests who are kind of interpreting the wills of the gods, you know, there's never a moment
but it's
where
still that moment where I mean like it's still that aspect of like it has to pass through somebody.
Yeah, like and especially like Thetis is the one who's also relating like, well, this is how the gods are kind of like arguing about it now. So that's sort of the thing. That's
true. And even with when Achilles comes to talk, whenever he says I need to talk to my mother, he's still the one that ends up bringing back what she said.
Right.
So there's
So eventually Deidamia leaves Skyros altogether, and supposedly she's visiting an aunt, but she's already like pregnant with Achilles' child.
Yeah, and it's like the dad wants her to go away before she swells.
Right.
Because nobody in the kingdom knows that
she's
been
because
married.
They still think Achilles is the handmaiden. At around the same time, or shortly after, that's when Odysseus and Diomedes arrive. And they're there, like, they're there supposedly to, like recruit people and like casually just ask people like, hey, you want to join the war? This is what's gonna happen. Just a bunch of the guys, we're going down to Troy and it's gonna be cool. You know, there's gonna be a lot of glory and you know, we can stop by 7-Eleven on the way. It's gonna be fine.
There's a 7-Eleven and Argos if you want to go.
And there's and there's an Argos at Argos. Sorry, that's a
good.
British joke, I think.
That is.
Anyway,
That was very good of you.
So eventually, like, it's revealed, like, obviously that's a ruse because Odysseus' whole thing is like forming ruses. He's very clever, and they've known that Achilles and Patroclus were in Skyros the whole time. So they're just doing a thing to trap them and basically urge them to come back. Hey, like, you guys are really needed. At least Achilles, you were especially necessary for us to like do this thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, around that time as well, like, they're like, fine, I guess, okay, Achilles has to go, and so does Patroclus, because they invoke his oath. But that's also when...
Oh, wait, sorry, but before they leave...
Yeah, that's also when Thetis reveals, like...
Yes,
but
okay.
Here's the thing. Yeah, if, like, the two problems, there are two ways that this could go. If Achilles doesn't go to Troy, his divinity will fade, and he's gonna basically die as a human, a full human. Which obviously she doesn't want, but then...
And he eventually realizes that he also does not.
Yeah, he doesn't. He loves, like, kind of that kind of divine aspect of him. And that's sort of the thing that kind of dooms them also, because as for if he goes to the war, the fates have decided that he will certainly die young if he goes to Troy.
Yeah.
And they try to figure out, like, what are the specifics of that? Like, is there a way that we can prevent it? And the thing that is revealed is that, okay, it's only gonna happen after Hector is killed by Achilles. And that, as we mentioned before, is the whole thing where it's like, well, that's easy. I don't have any reason to kill Hector.
Yeah,
so,
and that's why he,
like,
keeps
it's fine.
bringing it up, because he's like, I don't...
And that's sort of the thing, because, like, jumping ahead a bit, like, even though he holds on to that becomes a very crucial tension point for him and the Greeks, or the Achaeans. I was going to say the Achaeans. No, the Achaeans.
Is it Achaeans? Are they Achaeans?
Yeah, the Achaeans. Is that, you know, like, if you're such a great...
Who are the Myrmidons?
The Myrmidons are the specific...
Trojans?
No, the Myrmidons are the specific warriors from Phthia. They're like neighboring...
Oh!
Yeah, like a neighboring
okay.
system.
Okay.
So they're like the spec ops people of Phthia. And then, like, the whole idea is that the Achaeans sort of accuse him of not being that great a warrior because he hasn't killed Hector yet. And, like, kind of, like, it gets to Achilles' head almost, where, like, that excuse is just the only thing that's barely holding him from killing Hector. And obviously the tipping point of that is when he kills Patroclus.
Yeah.
But
he has an interesting line also where he asks... This is also jumping a bit ahead, but he asks Briseis about the royal family.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you know about Hector? And she admits, well, I don't know much about him, but I know about his wife, because she's from a neighboring village,
right,
from where I'm from. And then she explains that she had, like, a lot of brothers and sisters, and her dad was a nobleman, etc. All these things, and she's from this specific town. And then when they're alone, Achilles admits to Patroclus that they raided that town at the beginning of their, in the early years of the war.
Stage, right.
And then he killed all of, like, the brothers-in-law of Priam or Hector.
Of Hector.
Basically
of Hector's wife.
Hector. Yeah. So Hector's brothers-in-law, he killed all of them except one.
Yeah.
Because he was like, at least their line isn't gonna die.
Right.
And then Patroclus, like, thinks, like, well, who else would be this merciful? But also, is
yeah,
this
like,
considered
it's,
mercy?
Yeah.
Right, and then Achilles says, it's funny, I always say that Hector has never done anything to me, but now he cannot say the same.
Right.
And I was like, oh.
Oh yeah, that is such a good line for me. I thought that was a good line.
Right.
Okay, let's kind of, like, hurry through the next part, because at this point, like, when they start leaving for Troy, that's already, like, the halfway point of the book. And basically there are all these things where it's like, hey, you have to recognize Agamemnon as your commander, as your leader.
Yeah.
Which, like, Achilles, like, I'm not gonna do that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like, why the fuck would I do that?
Like this guy.
He makes a good point though, Chris. So he says, why would I do that when we're all generals?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Odysseus is like, yeah, but then
you're right.
It's
but,
his family.
Yeah, like, we're kind of here for him.
We kind of have, like,
it's a party for this guy.
Made this pledge for him. Yeah, exactly. And literally, never in the whole book, in any adaptation of this story, does he show respect.
Yeah, it's like
for this
like,
man.
He's like, why should he be the head bro when we're all considered bros?
we're
bros. We're bros.
Yeah, we're all bros.
But like, we're bros for him, you know?
Yeah. Who are you impersonating? What is this?
I have no idea. It just kind of came out of me. It's like I've been holding it back for years.
I'm kind of scared. I don't like it.
Anyway, so it also kind of gets to Achilles' head, like, hey, I do really have to like step up in this war because everyone's counting on me. All the people like look upon me as a hero.
Yeah.
And yeah, they basically set off. They set off with Achilles as the commander of the army. And he's like given all this new armor. He's given that spear that's fashioned by Chiron. And they set off in like 50 ships. And like he says goodbye to Peleus, and Peleus thinks like, that's my boy. And he, it's really sad because
and it's also to be noted that Peleus doesn't know.
Yeah, Peleus has no idea about any of the prophecies. He doesn't know that he's seeing his son for the last time.
Yeah, I mean, he knows about the prophecy that he's going to be the greatest.
Right, but like the extent of how that happens, is not known to him. So there's then this whole thing about where they arrive at a beachhead, where they meet with all the other armies that Menelaus and Agamemnon have gathered. And the whole thing that happens there on that beachhead is that they're stuck there for a while because...
For like months.
Straight up
months.
Very long time, because the gods who are on the Trojan side have done this to like not look upon them with favor. And like all they need is for Apollo... Was it Apollo? Or
no, it's
Poseidon?
Artemis.
Or Artemis, sorry. They need Artemis's... favor to be able to get the winds to sail to Troy. And the way that they do that is that Agamemnon sacrifices... they trick... Which, like, I can see
they trick everyone.
Right? Because, like, not only does he then sacrifice his daughter, but then he essentially sacrifices the betrothed of Achilles.
Yes.
After he promises Achilles to marry Iphigenia. And everyone's so shocked, and Achilles like feels super guilty, like, whoa, okay, that...
Because it happens right in front of everybody in broad daylight.
Yeah, and like the only people who knew about it were like surely like Agamemnon, Menelaus, Odysseus, and like Odysseus, and like they're like really mad at like Odysseus, like, why didn't you tell us? And Odysseus like tries to like wash his hands.
We could have stopped her.
Yeah, like it was the only way we could get her to come. And it was the only way that we could, like, kind of make the sacrifice, like, really big. And, like, true enough, it works. Like, they get the winds, and they're able to
literally,
sail.
as soon as she dies.
Yeah, like Artemis turns on the electric fan.
Yeah, like, literally, that's what happens. And
the turbo fan. And here you go. So they set off for Troy. And, like... I think we can sort of talk about the war in Troy very broadly because the latter half of the book does cover like 9 to 10 years.
Yeah, pretty well though.
Right, like we started out...
She's good at making you feel how draggy it is.
Yeah, because there's so much of it that is kind of them just like settling into a routine to the point that they literally build a town both on the beachhead and then later on the part of Troy where they land. Complete like with a marketplace and an agora, and they have like temples and everything, and people are living there, and there's trade. But they settle into a routine that begins with like them doing sieges on Troy by raiding all the nearby towns, as we mentioned earlier. And that's kind of like how Achilles starts to develop his like bloodthirst, where he just joins them casually. It's like, okay, I guess I'll go on the raids with them. But then, like, when he comes back, and, like, Patroclus doesn't, like, very pointedly does not come with him on the raids. He's like, I think I'm good. I think I'll stay here.
And then he eventually finds his purpose, though.
Yeah, he starts working with the physicians and the surgeons tent. And while Achilles kind of, like, becomes, like, a different person almost through the war, where he just comes home bloodied and broken almost.
And thinks nothing of it.
Yeah, he thinks nothing of it. But like he's just like bearing in mind, the only thing I shouldn't do is to kill Hector. And it's around this time as well that we're introduced to Briseis, who is one of the farm girls who is given up as a spoil from one of the raids. And Patroclus urges Achilles, like, hey, you should totally save that girl. So Achilles does, and then Briseis is made to live with
Calls
them.
dibs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Briseis, she doesn't really know any Greek, so throughout the years, Patroclus then kind of like becomes close to her, teaching her Greek, and then they kind of
No, this was also really great.
They're very sweet.
I really love this. Yeah, their whole dynamic was so
relationship
good
between them.
Yeah.
While Achilles keeps going out doing more raids, and the whole thing is that whenever a girl is put up as one of the spoils, they try to rescue her so that Briseis can then take care of them. And like, it's also the thing where it's like, well, Achilles also has to go into battle to prove himself as the greatest warrior, or else he won't really be deserving of the spoils. And then the war goes...
like a cycle.
At the same time, the war goes on for so long that people start to complain, like, hey, this war is not going anywhere.
Like around the 4-year mark.
We've not even scratched or attempted to scratch the walls of Troy. And like the whole thing is like people start to mutiny against them, which is like a big deal. And like Achilles tries to quell it. And in doing so, he kind of starts showing himself as a more capable leader than Agamemnon. And then the tensions...
And publicly embarrasses Agamemnon.
Right. And the tensions eventually escalate to the point where... What's the whole... Oh, yeah. They basically conduct another raid where Agamemnon tries to claim the daughter of a priest.
Of a priest, yes.
Chryses, and Chryseis is the daughter. He tries to claim her in the same way that Achilles claimed Briseis. But obviously with more violent intentions.
Yeah. And his mistake was that her father is a high priest of Apollo.
Right. And he came also to supplicate to Agamemnon, like, please return.
To Agamemnon.
Like, please return.
And it was like an intense supplication pa.
Yeah. But that whole thing happens, and Agamemnon still no. So obviously Apollo gets pissed. And what happens is that the plague rises up in the camp and starts killing, like, the Achaeans very slowly.
Yeah.
Which they're like, yeah, obviously something has to change here. They convince Agamemnon to return Chryseis, but then as a result, he's like, no, okay, if that's gonna happen, then I'm gonna take Achilles' girl, Briseis. Like, that's gonna be the price to pay to satiate this. Which is, we should mention, the starting point again of the Iliad. This is where the Iliad starts.
This is the specific part where it starts.
And the whole thing is that between Achilles and Agamemnon, Achilles is so pissed off already at Agamemnon that he allows Agamemnon to take Briseis. And his only condition is like...
Patroclus cannot deal with that.
Like, dude, what are you doing?
He's like, what's wrong with you? She's our friend.
Yeah.
And he's literally like, what? Like, he even forgets about her at one point when Patroclus is like, so what are we going to do? How are we going to save her? Achilles is like, who?
Yeah.
Who? What are you talking about?
Yeah, and Achilles...
And Patroclus gets so mad.
Right, because his whole motivation at that point is that he's trying to, like, hold up his pride and say teach Agamemnon a lesson for what he thinks is Agamemnon's hubris, but he's no longer self-aware about his own hubris. And you basically have that thing of, okay, I'm only going to take back Briseis if Agamemnon comes here himself and personally apologizes to me.
And says sorry,
Right, which he never does. And he's never going to do. So this goes on to the point that Achilles eventually decides, okay, I'm just not gonna fight. I'm not gonna join the raids anymore, and we'll see where that leaves you guys. And this gives the Trojans a huge advantage. Oh, I also forgot to mention that this advantage is also something that's divinely inspired, because Achilles is so angry at Agamemnon that he asks his mom,
which is a famous scene also
he asks his
in
mother to
the
ask
Iliad.
Zeus, for a favor. And that's kind of the favor that he grants him.
And again, the difference between this scene and, I mean, like, how Madeline does it versus how it was written in the Iliad, or, like, how people usually talk about it, is that this bit is literally Achilles, like, wailing his ass off to his mom, like a little brat. And then her being like, oh, okay, I'll do what I can, and then we'll see what, I'll be in your favor again. Pero here... Thetis is, like, also super pissed. She hates this. And she even says, like, Achilles says, will Zeus do it? Will Zeus tip the scale?
Right.
And she basically says, yeah, he owes me.
Yeah. And it's so funny because at the same time, like remembering again our classes before, if you didn't know anything about Achilles before you read the Iliad, and this is the entry point of the Iliad, you'll think, whoa, Achilles is just like a huge brat.
Yeah,
like here,
yeah, exactly, and that's
we're
usually
so
how
deep,
he's
right, depicted,
characterized.
yeah, and then like at least here,
Mhm.
like we're so deep into the novel already, like we've spent time, we've seen all these like sort of variations on that
You know
mood,
that this is not truly him.
but like also his most sincere and earnest parts throughout his relationship with Patroclus. And then it comes to a point where the Trojans get close enough that they can break through the Achaean camp. And even though they set up like a ditch with like spikes and everything, it's not enough. Like eventually the Trojans then gain the help of Sarpedon, who's like their huge, like they're heavy in their team, and he basically helps them to get to the front line of the Achaean camp. And it's at that point, like when they finally start invading the Achaean camp, knowing how close Agamemnon's tent is to the front line, they're like scared specifically for Briseis. And Patroclus is hearing the worries of all the other soldiers around him. And it's during that time, by the way, as he's helped in the medical tent, that he's become close to all the other soldiers in the camp. So he's feeling bad for his friends, he's feeling bad for Briseis, and eventually he kind of just appeals to Achilles, like, can you please fight, at least like fight them off? And Achilles like, no. And Patroclus is like, well, fine, let them call me by your name.
Okay. Wait, no, but then like it before that, your boy Phoenix.
Oh yeah, my boy Phoenix.
It has to say, which is also a famous scene from the Iliad, where he kind of tells this story that to other people at the dinner with Achilles seems random, but turns out to be code.
Right. For Patroclus.
For Patroclus.
It's the story of Meleager.
This guy, Meleager and Cleopatra.
Yes.
One of the Cleopatras na parang he had to go to war and then eventually got disrespected also, and he didn't want to go anymore.
Yeah.
But then for it to end, he needed to show himself either way, and then eventually like that makes everything turn out good in their favor.
And like the whole time they're like looking at Patroclus. So they're like, if Cleopatra did not tell Meleager to fight, Meleager wouldn't have fought. So what I'm saying is Cleopatra should definitely always
do something. Yeah, she should do something and always be persuasive. And if it comes to the point where she gotta wear that uniform and be called by his name, so be it.
And that is their fatal mistake.
It's true.
Because Patroclus is then...
as we all know.
Like, Patroclus eventually, like, he starts off well, like, he manages to kill Sarpedon.
Yeah, he kills Sarpedon. Yeah,
which is, like, amazing.
Which is a big deal, because he is their Ajax, right?
Yeah.
Like, to anyone who knows, Ajax was, like, their biggest...
Yeah, he was their Hulk.
To Achilles. Yeah, he was essentially Hulk. I did imagine him that big.
Yeah.
And Sarpedon was apparently, like,
similarly
bigger than
big. Yeah, and Patroclus had never fought before. So for him, like, this was huge. Like, honestly, like, quite deserving of a lot of honor and war glory. And, like, it kind of gets to Patroclus' head where he's like, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to throw a spear here. I'm going to throw a spear there. I'm going to throw a spear into the 7-Eleven.
And then the charioteer is like, all right, man, maybe let's like, go home now.
Yeah, like, hold it back.
Like, pull back.
But Patroclus is like, no! And then he, like, literally jumps on the wall of Troy, and he starts climbing it himself, and it's like...
Yeah, and
it's a very slow climb.
Shit hits the fan. Yeah, but that scene is so good, too, because I read it in slow motion. Did you also?
Sort of, yeah.
Like, I really was like, oh my god, I'm really feeling it. And that's where you see Apollo. Because at the top of the wall is there. Apollo. And Apollo lifts him up and basically drops him to the ground.
Right.
And he feels himself, his armor, Achilles' armor, basically come off him already because he's been through it. He was already stabbed, and then he fell off this wall, and then he gets stabbed again.
Yeah.
I think, and then eventually Hector
comes in, the killing blow.
News
very quickly reaches Achilles. He goes
and the body is
crazy over
brought
it.
back.
Yeah, the body's
The
brought
body
back.
is brought back.
And
This
he
is another
refuses
specific-
to like bury the body
To
of
bury the
Patroclus. Like,
body.
he keeps the body there
Yeah.
in the tent. Which like
and at one point he even refuses to let Breezy's clean the body.
Yeah. Like that sort of also like helps to explain the narrative limitation that Madeline has put upon herself by choosing to set this from Patroclus' perspective, because if he dies at that point in the war, then he essentially never gets to witness it. But then she finds the loophole, which I think is very good. That
so good.
if you don't bury a Greek body in the Greek tradition, their soul kind of wanders the land where they've been killed.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what happens, and how you're able to hear the rest of Patroclus' story, or the rest of the Trojan War from Patroclus' perspective, is that he's wandering the land of around where he's been killed.
Yeah, and so he watches everything happen, and his soul tries to beg Achilles to just let it go and like bury him already.
Yeah,
but it won't happen.
Yeah, and Achilles,
he is so enraged and full of grief,
and he really takes it out the next day, where he like decides like, fine, I'm gonna go into this war. Like he does get Agamemnon.
The day Hector dies.
Like Agamemnon's like, okay, fine, I'll apologize now.
Yeah, grabe, that scene was so, and I think it's one of the things also is that again, talking about the limitations and stuff, is that in the Iliad, after there's a really specific point where you never hear of Agamemnon ever again.
Yeah.
And then, I remember this specifically because Leon, it's one of his favorite parts.
Right,
if I remember correctly. And he always brings it up. So to see him there again, in that scene, and just be all like, hey, by the way, I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
I will let you grieve.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. I was like, you're the worst, my dude.
Yeah, it's really rough. And he starts going out, starts killing everyone, like every Trojan in sight, until he finds Hector. My favorite thing, which is kind of glossed over here, not really glossed over, it's given its own space, but it's given a whole book in the Iliad where Achilles fights a river god.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna mention that also. I mean, I was gonna ask you about that, because I was like, when does that happen?
Yeah, like
when does he fight the water?
He fights the water, and then like you can imagine Hayao Miyazaki is reading this and being like,
I know, that's a Mulaney joke in itself
not
also.
A bad idea.
Yeah. He's like, I gotta...
A living river, you say.
A living river. Would
you
say that somebody was spirited away even at one point?
Yeah, and eventually he does find Hector and he kills Hector, and like that's a whole thing. Like he very spitefully like takes the corpse of Hector and he parades it around the city of Troy. Like, I killed him, and he takes it to his tent, and like he also does not bury it so that Hector does not find any peace. And it's really sad.
And it leads up to your favorite, as you said, the best scene.
Yeah, my favorite scene, Priam showing up.
Where Priam and his wife. I know in the Iliad it was Priam and his wife.
No, it was just Priam.
Because, oh, really?
It was just Priam. It's a very solitary scene between the two of them. They're privately.
I just know that the last lines are him, right?
Yeah.
Like that last monologue is his.
Yeah. They have that last monologue, and then they leave, and then like the last line of the Iliad is like they buried Hector, and then the funeral essentially. But that scene happens, and like very quickly after they have the funerals for both Hector and Patroclus.
Yeah.
And then other warriors start to come and challenge Achilles, but he manages to kill all of them. And the one that kind of like goes a streak too far is that Achilles also kills the youngest son of Priam.
Yes.
Troilus.
Which is also mentioned in... Is it not mentioned in the Iliad?
I feel like no, because this is after Priam already arrives at
so I guess
tent.
it's just something I know.
Yeah, but this is what provokes Paris to kill Achilles. And then, obviously, like, the prophecy was fulfilled.
It's filled! What have we done?
Yeah. Achilles, they have a funeral for Achilles. And that's when, like, at the very end, like, who shows up? None other than... the 12-year-old son of Achilles.
Yeah.
Pyrrhus. fresh from.
Oh, I was about to call him Neo something, but his nickname is Pierce nga pala.
Oh yeah. I could
because his real name is like New War.
Yeah, I could not. His real name means New War, and like the whole idea is that he has been raised fully now by Thetis.
By Thetis.
That's where she's been this whole time. It's kind of like sheltering Pyrrhus and training him to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
And kind of what is very evident right away from there is that he is the evil version of Achilles. Like, he has no qualms. He'll kill everyone. He'll destroy everything. And like when they tell Pyrrhus, like, hey, we're gonna bury your dad and we're gonna like mingle his ashes with Patroclus as he wished.
Yeah. Because that was his last wish.
Yeah.
He and Thetis don't want.
Yeah. Because he's saying, like, my father was a god and a hero. There's no point in mingling his ashes with a true mortal that. Like, who was he? I didn't even know who Patroclus was. Like, he was.
But also, dude, you didn't even know your dad. So,
literally.
Grow up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The thing is, like, with, like, Pyrrhus, like, even goes so far as to kill Briseis when she tries to escape. He kills Priam. He kills Hector's family. He takes the wives in Priam's family as his prisoners. And he even sacrifices one of the princesses to inaugurate the tomb of Achilles. So it's very, very violent, like following after Achilles. But sort of, I forget now if this was mentioned in the text, or if it's something that I picked up in the notes after. But the whole thing about Pyrrhus is that he kind of dies shortly after they leave Troy.
Yeah, I remember that also.
And the whole idea is that he dies very unceremoniously, being killed by one of the sons of Agamemnon.
Agamemnon.
Yeah, because he takes the wife of Agamemnon.
Oh, that's right.
Or something. Sorry, not the wife, but like one of the daughters. Sorry. He's killed by the son of Agamemnon for taking the wife of that son.
Right, okay.
Right, so he's killed very unceremoniously and basically without honor.
And very fast.
Right,
yeah.
And the Trojans are sieged. It's destroyed. They win the war. I mean, the Greeks win the war, and they set sail to go home. While Patroclus' spirit is left behind near the tomb of Achilles. And the whole time, like, Patroclus doesn't really have any company. Except for
Thetis.
Yeah, she shows up over and over again.
She shows up.
And she's kind of like she's sort of feeling the futility of this whole thing. Like, it's over now. He's dead and he's in the underworld. And what have I gotten out of it? Essentially nothing. And Patroclus kind of like convinces her, like, hey, I know you always hated me, but I'm the guy who got to see all the best parts of your son. And I think if we're going to remember him, we shouldn't remember him as this killer, this person who destroyed and pillaged all these farms and towns and cities around Troy. But we should remember him as the good guy that he was, the good person that he was to me. And he basically starts recalling all those things about their life together. And it feels like Thetis kind of with her own memory of her own life and what she went through and her own feelings about Achilles growing up and dying. And like, I think what's super interesting about the scene is I'm like 80% certain this scene does not come out in like original Greek tradition.
No, not at all. Tradition, I don't think so also. Right? No.
So this scene,
and this is what I was like talking about also, like how Madeline is very good at making you sympathize for like female characters that are usually set aside.
So this,
or like depicted as really bad.
This scene, I think, is interestingly enough, it's a counterpoint to the scene between Achilles and Priam. Where, like instead of Achilles and Priam kind of like recognizing each other, it's like, hey, we've both lost someone that we love in the war, and I need you to recognize that so that I can ask you to appeal to that sense of sympathy to bury my son and to bury the man who you love. In the same way, Thetis and Patroclus are now meeting each other and saying, hey, look, we both loved him. We both knew what was good about him. And I'm appealing to that in you to see some value in me so that I can convince you that his life was not totally a waste.
Yeah.
And that's what warms her
Absolutely.
up to him.
Yeah.
And
That
she
last
kind of like
scene touched
opens
her.
up and says like, you know, the worst part of this is I can't even go to the underworld to see him.
Yes. Yeah, when she says that, oh my god.
Yeah, and it's like he's never gonna be a god now. Like he's gonna be in the underworld.
Yeah.
And like once she makes peace with the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, she inscribes Patroclus's name on the tomb, and that allows Patroclus to go into the underworld to reunite with Achilles.
Yeah.
And that's how the book ends.
But I think in the ending of the book, because she does that, does he go to the underworld? I know that they end up going to, what's the name of the heaven for heroes?
The Elysian Fields. But that's the Elysian Fields are also kind of in the underworld, sort of.
Is it?
At least in Dante's.
I had no idea.
At least I remember that's being outlined in either in Dante or in classic lit, is that what the Greeks perceived as the Elysian Fields were a part of the underworld. Everyone basically goes to the underworld.
I just know that. Well, in Dante, I remember Achilles being in hell.
Yeah, because the whole thing there is that first circle of hell, there's that it's basically Elysium, where all the noble souls are put, but they're put there without the knowledge and kind of like fealty to God. So they live their lives like, okay, we were noble people, but now that we know the whole order and structure of the universe, we basically got what we wanted, which is to live here with all these other noble souls.
Right. Yeah. Okay, gets. Okay.
And that is the end of the Song of Achilles.
Grabe. My favorite song.
Oh. So I really liked reading this. We mentioned at the start that this is my first reading of this book. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though I'd known about it since we were in college, I was encountering this book like really fully for the first time. And kind of like trying to be sensitive to what she wanted to do here with this book and how she wanted to write it. And like, you know, I'm glad now that I have the maturity to see that, okay, this is what, like, instead of demanding of it to be like a worthy representation of the Iliad, which I would have probably like misguidedly thought it as a younger person, at least now I'm able to see like, okay, I can kind of see what her objective is, and I feel like she pretty much nailed it, which is that she really wanted to explore this dynamic between them, which is like heavily featured in the Iliad, but not given like really its own space to breathe, which I think she did perfectly here. And that, again, as I mentioned before, speaks so much to the rich tapestry of story that you can find in the Iliad and in the Odyssey, that you can just like pluck any two characters from it, and you'll be able to see like there's a whole side of them that you don't know, and it's not like in a corny kind of like twisted reinvention.
No, it's really just like because there's so much to explore. Why shouldn't someone do it?
I think it's with that in mind that I would highly recommend this book.
Agree.
You definitely recommend it.
I'm super biased. But like, you know, I will admit that I am super biased since I have been in this fandom longer than you.
Yeah.
I did read it as a young person, and
do you feel like your sense of it has changed? But then
like, you know, sorry?
Do you feel like your opinion of it has changed since the time you revisited it? Like since you first read it?
I mean, like, well, now obviously I understand it a lot deeper, even if I had read it after taking classical lit. But again, you know, I read it in second year, so we had no majors yet. So there was still a lot for me to unpack.
Right.
In terms of like also my own reading and comprehension skills as a humanities student. But like rereading it again now, I really was like bumping my fists, you know, like I was like, yes, still so good. Like a thing that I should have mentioned also earlier is that this has some of the most quoted stuff on Tumblr, I think.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of lines here that a lot of people have used as like titles for fanfic, or just as inspiration for something else entirely, or if they just post a screenshot of like that line and, you know, post it on Tumblr or post it on Twitter even. There's even a whole bot on Twitter that's just like Song of Achilles lines.
Right.
And a lot of the ones that get retweeted the most are the more famous ones, like the I would know him in death, that one, or the he is half of my soul, as the poets say.
Yes.
And I feel like those lines like those are so, I guess, I don't know, some people might, maybe that's why some people think that it's so cheesy or like so YA. But like either way, it's like good writing. Like it gets to me,
Yeah.
Even if, as you said, that it does still feel like a YA novel sometimes. I still really also would super recommend this book. Because, again, if this is your first encounter with the Greek myths, or like your first deep dive, because maybe a lot of people's first encounter might have been like a Disney movie. Like, this would still hold up, and you would still learn things that could eventually, spark your interest in it. And
right.
As I mentioned before, it made a lot of people want to go into classics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, super highly recommend. Good writing.
Yes. And I think it's good that you brought back again the whole idea of its popularity within like fan communities, especially those that were on Tumblr. Because like when we were kind of talking about setting up this miniseries, and we were like talking about how Madeline would fit into it, one of the interesting angles that you had brought up, which we'll go on talking about soon in the next episode, is that when she did come out with her second novel, that kind of popularity or that level of popularity did not remain consistent.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to get into that.
Which is so crazy to me to this. Yeah.
In the next episode on Circe. We thank everyone for listening to the show. If you really, really love this show so far, we've got 3 episodes up. Please do. We highly encourage checking out our Sally Rooney episodes. We really enjoyed doing our normal people episode, especially. There was so much fun that we had over making that. But also, like, if you want to leave any ratings or reviews, if you want to subscribe, if you want to give us a shout, we are also on Instagram and Twitter. And we would love to hear from you again.
Yeah. And also, if you guys want to talk about this book, or any of the books that we've covered so far, just hit us up, man.
Yeah, we're here, man.
Message us again on social media. We're the Req Room Pod on all social media platforms.
Also, do check out, like, I think we now have the opportunity to mention on this episode that at least in social media, we'll be announcing like any bonus things that we'll be releasing. So, like,
that's very true.
Like, for normal people, one of the things that we have done is to do a bonus mixtape dedicated
Made a little mixtape. We pulled an old Tumblr move.
Yeah, the best character.
We did an old Tumblr move.
And our mixtape's called Niall from 1D. So you can find the link to that mixtape in our Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
Right, so we'll see you there. And until next time, call me.
Oh my god.
Call me by your name.
That's how we're ending this, okay.
What do you have? Oh, wait. We already established during this episode that you knew the Songs of Achilles. Why don't you tell us a song?
No. I will say that the number one song that was always attributed to him back in the day was, again, a Marina and the Diamond song, which is Prima Donna Girl. Is it Prima Donna? Or is it just called Prima Donna? That one. I'm not going to sing it because I don't remember how most of it goes.
All right. And with that, thanks and goodbye.
Sorry. I don't know what happened.
We were all bros, man.
Yeah, all right. Okay. This is ending.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Req Room. This episode was edited by me. Our artwork is by Mandy. Our theme song is 64 Sundays by Twin Musicom, which is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution License. Check out more of their music at www.twinmusicom.org.
A very special thanks to our friend Leon Peckson for his special segment on the Homeric epics.
For more updates on The Req Room, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Req Room Pod. Req spelled R-E-Q.